to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have such a powerful show coming right up. Our special guest is Olympia LePoint. Now, Olympia has been dubbed the modern-day hidden figure. She's an award-winning rocket scientist and author who overcame poverty, gang violence, and failing marks to eventually launch 28 rocket missions to space. Olympia is now applying the same math and science she used at NASA to show audience and readers how anyone can remap their own thoughts to remove fear, unleash their brain power, and change the course of their life. So Olympia's highly popular TED Talk, Reprogramming Your Brain to Overcome Fear, has over 1 million views worldwide. And she hosts her own weekly radio program, Answers Unleashed, which you should follow. I'm following it as well, and has appeared on NBC, CBS, PBS, and the CW network across the country. Olympia's first book, Mathophobia, teaches people how to overcome their fear of math, while Olympia's newest book, Answers Unleashed, unveil her brain power unleashing system. So let's welcome to the show, Olympia.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be on your show and to talk about my new book, Answers Unleashed.
Well, I am so honored that we get to spend this time with you. I mean, gosh, you are just such an inspiration. Your life really holds an inspiration for many people that maybe think, gosh, I can't do it, or the chips are stacked against me, or I'm not raised in the right type of family to make my dreams possible.
Oh, yes. And that's something in which my entire life represents. I am Olympia LePoint. I am well known for my TED Talk, Reprogramming Your Brain to Overcome Fear, where I speak about how I had to reprogram my own thoughts to become an award-winning rocket scientist. And since then, I've been able to share with other people through my books, my first book, Mathophobia, and now the second book, Answers Unleashed, the process to actually go about changing the way that we think and rewiring our brain to actually do great things in our lives. And I had to do that in my own life because I did not come from a world of great success. I was born in South Central Los Angeles to a single mom who struggled to take care of all of us. And through the process of my journey, I learned to overcome horrendous things in that area. And some of people who watch my TED Talk will hear about and see about how I had to overcome gang violence and failing grades to eventually land myself into college, where I literally worked really hard. And in doing so, I became one of the top 5 graduates out of a 6,500 graduating class from California State University, Northridge, and later went on to become a scientist who launched rockets. And I was very thankful to work with a team of genius people. And altogether, I and my team and great people, we helped launch 28 space shuttle missions to space in my time there, and then I was the person that sat in mission control. So after I left that, I left and I went into banking, and then I went into teaching as a mathematics professor. But my true passion is helping people rewire their brain so they can actually become a genius at any age. And it doesn't matter your background. My work is showing how we can overcome fear and move towards something that is more positive and more productive in our life, which is our life mission. And I'm so excited to be able to share this in the book Answers Unleashed.
Well, and I want to touch on your first book just a little bit, because I think it's such a powerful book, and it doesn't matter what age a person is. It's something like I went through that growing up. You talk about mathophobia, and being able to get, be in a place where it's like not really understanding how math works. And there's a large percentage of the population that struggles with this, to being able to become the modern day hidden figures, and working with NASA. I mean, people look at that, and that's such an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really am honored to be called the modern day Hidden Figure. When I watched the movie Hidden Figures, it was just amazing. And when I saw Katherine Johnson's story, I was looking at my story on screen, but I have a little bit more, a little more drama at the beginning part. and it's fascinating, and I'm honored to be able to share this. People Magazine, when it called me the modern day Hidden Figure. And it's because I share with people how to overcome their fear. And in my first book, Mathophobia, it's dealing with the fear of mathematics. And so many people fear mathematics. 9 out of 10 people in the United States have trouble doing calculations. And this is something that is really major, because if we look at all the STEM fields, and STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the mathematics is the basis for everything. And any country that progresses is a country that has a strong background in the sciences. So when there's individuals who are having trouble doing calculations and trouble understanding the way to communicate in mathematics, the logic of things, it's what I've found through all my studies and research is that it's due to a mathophobia. And if someone doesn't overcome their mathophobia, we'll have a generation of people unable to create the technology that will make us competitive in the world. But not only that, we won't be able to contribute to the world's solutions when it comes time to figure out how to remove global warming or reduce its impact, or how to find different ways for safety regulations in natural disasters, or figure out how bridges are actually going to be maintained after long periods of time. So this is what we're looking at. So in the book Mathophobia, I talk about the 4 fears, and I talk about what mathophobia is. Well, mathophobia is a severe fear that happens in the brain when someone looks at mathematics. So, for example, if someone is trying to do calculations and they have a fear of mathematics, it trips and it flags the reptilian part of the brain to fire. And this is the same part of the brain that is responsible for the fight or flight. If you see a tarantula walking, oh my God, that's something that I'm like freaked out by. I have to really train my brain not to think about something like that. But if that were to happen, that would be a situation in which you would either fight it, you try and flee it off, you'd run from it, you flee it, or you'd freeze up. And that is the part of the reptilian part of the brain. Its job is to keep you alive. But the issue is that when someone, especially a child experiences the first type of mathematics type of hindrance or fear regarding that, it freezes up the brain. And the reason why mathophobia is so critical to remove from the brain and that fear is that if someone has a fear turned on regarding mathematics, it then shuts off the frontal brain lobes that are responsible for creative problem solving. And all of mathematics and STEM and all the sciences require problem solving, that frontal part of the brain lobe, to work. So if someone doesn't find a way to remove the mathophobia, they're not able to do well in the sciences. So in my book, Mathophobia, I talk about how to remove it. There's 4 types of characters. The first character is Quincy the quitter. He'll quit before he even tries. The second person is Donna the overdoer. She'll overdo and she'll memorize everything and she'll still fail tests. The next person is Samuel the struggler. He's the person who doesn't understand the key aspects of how his brain works, and he has trouble communicating his genius to other people. So people think he's dumb, and he's not. He's like a genius in disguise. And then there is Crystal the criticizer. She'll point fingers at everyone else for her poor performance because she doesn't know how to become a beginner again. So my book, Mathophobia, deals with eliminating that fear so someone's frontal brain lobes can turn on when they're dealing with mathematics, so they can actually do this type of science work that's seen in Hidden Figures and a lot of other great applications.
Now, there's something that, and we had talked about this once before, but there's something that you say in your TED Talk that really struck a chord with me. And it's just this, your attitude is just like, you know what, I can't get this now, but I know that I will later. I'm not going to let failure stop me. I just love that. I mean, to me, it's almost like a combination between like a declaration, like, hey, I'm going forward, and this aha moment all in one.
Yes. And that's how I realized the brain reshapes. The brain reshapes through decisions. The decision to overcome fear. Fear is not something we're born with at all. Fear is just something that we acquire because we go through traumatic situations and have painful memories. And so we befriend, I say this strategically, we befriend fear. Fear is never a part of us. We befriend it because of very painful situations, and we cope with difficult situations by accepting the fear. So when in my TED Talk, when I said I'm not going to let fear stop me, it was like the craziest moment. That moment in the TED Talk referred to a moment where I was sitting in this room filled with like around 200 men, and I was like the only woman. And I was the youngest person, and those of you that follow me and those of you of your audience that actually know what I look like, I'm a woman of color, a young woman of color.
It's such a male-dominated area, too, you know.
Yes, and I was a woman, and so the most interesting part was I was very young. I started when I was 21 doing this stuff, and so it was the major challenge was breaking mindsets, and that was a major challenge. I had something to offer, and the mindset of the environment wasn't accustomed to having a young woman like myself present information that was going to change things. And it was the most challenging experience. And I remember sitting in this room, and that's what I talk about in this TED Talk, and I looked around the room, and the epiphany moment came when I looked around the room and I realized everyone was about to retire. And there was somebody had to carry this on because these brilliant individuals couldn't do this forever. There had to be a new generation to do this. And either I was going to step up and take that opportunity and take every single challenge, good or bad, that was thrown at me in that type of situation, or I was going to let fear stop me and not move forward and just give back the opportunity that was laying right in front of me. And that was my decision.
Well, and it's interesting because, like, a lot of times when people come up to realizing these kind of things, it's like, you know, either they're going to step forward or just kind of stay with the status quo or give up, and you're all gung-ho.
Well, it took a while, and I really think I wrote about this in my Huffington Post article. The second day that I worked there was a couple of women. I didn't even know them. They pulled me into the restroom, and this was right after somebody, older male gentleman, looked at me and actually circled around me and was just complete surprised to see a young woman there working in there. And I didn't even know how to handle that. And so there's these women that brought me into the restroom, and they told me, this is a male-dominated environment, and you have to know that you're here for a reason. Anytime that you get frustrated, you've got to realize that you've got to remain calm, you've got to remain cool, because this is an opportunity. And if you're ever in a situation where you are frustrated or fearful or don't know what to do, come into the restroom. We'll come here with you, talk it out with us, but you have to remain your cool, because there's 20 people 20 men specifically, who are aligned to take your place. And so when I was told the truth. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I was told the truth.
Really good advice.
It was. And so it turned out like these women turned out to be my mentors. They were administrative they're administrative assistants. So they were like the people that helped the CEOs, and they weren't scientists. They were the women that were there watching this, and they told me that I was one woman. They hadn't seen another woman working on the floor in the last 15 years. So this is. They were just telling me the truth, and so I had that in my head, thinking, all right, this is an opportunity. Will I buckle down the pressure, or will I decide that I'm not going to let fear stop me. And when we decided, when we recognize we have an option, we have the ability to change situations and actually move forward in life, that's when great things happen.
And what a testament, because, I mean, obviously these women had seen over and over again just the dynamics going on, kind of being an observer, because they were admin assistants, so they weren't really in the pit with the men, but they could see what was happening enough to give you that kind of insight.
Yes, and that was the amazing part, and I was very thankful for that. So in the TED Talk, in my TED Talk and in my second book, I talk about the power of choice. When we make certain decisions, it actually reshapes our brain, and we have to sometimes make decisions that are tough. But when we are actually willing to make that decision, that's when our brain reshapes, and that's when we can change our life.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've been such an inspiration to so many people who have just struggled with math, showing them that, hey, you can get from there to, from being in a place of struggle and fear to moving beyond that. And now you have this new book that's out. And how did your new book, Answers Unleashed, come into being? What was the inspiration behind this?
Oh, thank you for asking me that question. It was three things. My own experience. I had to change my own way of thinking when I was going through such difficult times of finding a way to be able to get out of my particular environment and find an education for myself when nobody in my family had had that type of education previously. And then the second part, and I share this, my mother went through an accident. She was a pedestrian, and she had to go through brain surgery, and she almost died. And I'm a spiritual person, so by the grace of God, I'm thankful because she survived. And when she survived, there was a couple things that happened. There was literally a miracle, and I state this as a scientific fact because I remember the surgeons telling us that she had severe injuries, that we were going to be fortunate if she made it through the night, and she had 2 broken vertebrae. And we didn't know what to do. And everyone prayed for my mother. And the next day, when I asked for x-rays of my mother's back to be taken, there were no signs of any broken vertebrae at all anymore, even though there were 6 different surgeons that witnessed it with their own eyes the day before. And I was just in shock. And I was thankful at the same time, but I didn't know how to describe that type of event. I knew it was a miracle, but I thought, what's the science behind this? Literally. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, my mother, when she survived, she had to learn how to walk, talk, eat, sleep, everything, like an infant again. And it was working with her doctors, it was working with her neurologists, it was working with her brain surgeons and physical therapists that I start to recognize the power of our brains. We have such a huge, huge ability in ourselves to change our lives through our thoughts and our determination and our drive to move forward. And that is actually what allowed me to be able to see, oh my God, we have such a powerful force within us that we don't even know how to use. And then on top of that, when I worked with the scientists who were able to create brilliant scientific inventions, not from any type of book, but from their imagination, literally. They would have a dream of something, and they would find a way to build it. And they found the science. But it was that visionary part of the brain that used all the different tools and techniques and logic and creativity to be able to bring this vision into fruition. And so I started looking at my own situation of how I had to overcome my own negative thoughts of growing up and how I had to rewire my own brain. Then I started looking at my mother, how she rewired her own brain after the surgery with a part of the brain I call the faith sector. And then with the engineers, how they're able to literally see a particular design and then bring it into existence, it was all the same part of the brain, which neuroscientists hadn't really yet scientifically defined. So this book, Answers Unleashed, really came about. I had the idea in my head for probably a couple of years, but it didn't really come to the surface until an initiating event. And this initiating event was something very traumatic that happened. My sister went in for a routine sinus surgery, and it didn't go well. Oh. And as a result, she had her sinus cavity punctured, and she went through a situation where bacteria is introduced to her brain. And so she had to go through brain surgery to remove the infection, and she almost died. Two completely separate situations in my own family that dealt with the brain. I had to overcome my own situations with the brain, and then I was working with genius individuals that after I had left, I realized there's some sort of way to be able to show this particular process to other people who are going to become these brilliant engineers. And my sister's situation is what triggered the need to write this book so people can understand what I've witnessed with what the brain can do to not only heal itself, but to create scientific invention and to change the course of someone's life. So I'm so thankful because the book Answers Unleashed talks about what I call the tria brain. It's the three-sided brain. It's the left side of the brain that everyone knows me for doing, which is like the logical side, the scientific side. But it's also the right side of the brain, which scientists and psychologists have always found to be expressive and the communicative side that allows their way to be able to sense things. But now I'm introducing something that's new to the science world, which is the faith sector of the brain. And so the three sides, I call it the tria brain, the three-sided brain. And it deals with understanding that the third side is the faith sector, and that is responsible for connecting the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, left side of the brain and the right side of the brain together. Let me say that a little better. And then,
I gotcha.
Thank you. and then it's also the connecting the brain to the body. Just like a tree has roots that goes into the ground, and the deeper the roots, the stronger the tree, the brain is the exact same way. The deeper the roots is the deeper the nervous system and how it fires correctly. And when we realize that the brain extends into the body through these roots of the nervous system, that means that a thought is not only in your head, it's actually in your arm, it's in your hip, it's in your foot, and your body communicates to you messages. And that's where you have intuition, and I'm introducing that as a new form of science. And so I'm very thankful because this new understanding of the tria brain helps people recognize what their thoughts are and the purpose of a thought, which is that a thought is used to convert the energy in your system, and it's used to convert the energy from the outside world into beneficial energy into your body and your brain. So it can be transformed to unleash beneficial energy into the world, which is through innovation. And my thing is scientific innovation. If we can present new solutions to help our globe, we will be here successfully thriving in years to come.
Well, and you had mentioned this and kind of touched on it a little bit, the faith sector of the brain. So how exactly does that work, and can you explain that a little bit more for our listeners?
Yeah, great. The faith sector of the brain is responsible for operating independent of time and space. Einstein was able to say and be able to prove that energy is equal to mc squared. And so for those of you who are science buffs, you know that everything is energy. Well, the brain operates in energy. When we have certain thoughts about the future, we can have beneficial thoughts or negative thoughts. It's our decision-making that allows us to be able to move forward. Now, let's give an example. If you consider an Olympic athlete, the difference between an Olympic athlete versus a regular athlete is that an Olympic athlete has seen themselves win the gold medal before they actually have it. They literally envision themselves winning. They follow everything per their vision of success. That's what allows them to move forward. That's using what I call the faith sector of the brain, seeing something before it happens and bringing it into existence. People who were in my mother's rehabilitation did the same thing. The people who saw themselves healed, but despite any doctor's prognosis, were the ones who healed faster and stronger than the ones who didn't see themselves healed. Scientific innovators were the exact same way. They saw an invention before it was even created. It didn't even exist. They saw it. Like a perfect example, in 1932, people at Bell Lab saw a phone that they could use that wasn't attached to a wall, that they can bring anywhere and punch numbers on, and they can call. Back in 1932, people had visions of cell phones that were later created years later.
I totally get that because we've seen that in movies like 20 years ago, and it's something that's developed now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. When people actually envision something, it actually can come forward because that is the part of the faith brain. It's being able to see an existence independent of time and space. The left side and the right side of the brain are constricted by time and space. We're used to being able to know exactly what's in front of us, be able to put the paper clip inside the box, we're able to write something down on a piece of paper. That is the functional part of our brain that we're used to and what we operate with. But there's also a different part of the brain that we operate with, and it's more subconscious if you do not know how to use it. And it is your belief system on how you see things going to happen. And that belief system actually is responsible for rewiring and connecting parts of your brain. If you are conscious of your thoughts, you then can connect your brain in a way where it fires faster. And that's what the faith part of the brain does. It is the connections that allows you to use a thought to connect your brain and rewire it.
There's a lot of talk, and I hear this term being thrown around a lot. I'm not sure people really understand sometimes what it is that they're speaking about, but when we talk about neuroplasticity, it seems like it's like one of the hot topics that people are talking about it nowadays. So what is that? And is it something that we can encourage its growth?
Oh, really great question. That is a hot topic. Neuroplasticity means to move and reshape, like a plastic rubber band. It can move and it can stretch, right? You can actually change the shape. So plasticity recognizes the movement and the reshaping. Neuro is brain. So when you put it together, neuroplasticity is being able to change your brain. Now, so people do this, people are able to change the brain in several different ways. People change it through cognitive behavioral therapy, where people actually rewire the brain that way. People also change it through when, let's say, my mother goes through neurosurgery. That's a dramatic example of how the brain structure is changed through a trauma. But when we put the word self-directed neuroplasticity with it, that means that you can change your brain and change the shape of your brain yourself through your thoughts. So this book is a self-directed neuroplasticity approach to be able to use your brain to change use your thoughts to be able to change your brain's interior structure and rewire it. So neuroplasticity is such a hot topic because it is where all the science actually is moving towards. You see this with artificial intelligence. You see Elon Musk all concerned about, oh my gosh, there's artificial intelligence. Will it be able to take over? And that's the reason why there's such a push to understand how the brain works. Because if we can understand how the brain works, we'll always be able to create the innovation instead of allowing it to take over. And so I'm a firm believer that humans are always, no matter what, going to be brilliant and always one step ahead of any type of artificial intelligence is because we have the faith sector of our brain that sees things independent of space and time, as well as the intuition that the faith section houses. And the intuition is being able to know something before the scientific evidence is actually presented. And so that's how I describe the faith sector. And the neuroplasticity is how you can reshape your brain using this own knowledge of your thoughts and your own intuition of knowing it before it actually exists.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us, because so often we have people that kind of throw that term around and kind of assume that people know what that means. When there's been some back 30 or 40 years ago, they didn't even think that the brain can even have any changes. It was like, you got what you got, too bad. And so it's such a great time that we live in. And I'm so excited, especially to have a brain power expert such as yourself sharing this with us, because your book, Answers Unleashed, is actually being taught in colleges.
Yes. I'm so excited. This November 30th, we have a huge book signing at California State University, Northridge. It is a textbook. It is a book that is being used on college campuses, as well as it is in such an easy-read textbook that people take it home to read it and at their house, wherever they are. I describe the science in it in people's real-life stories. So often we get so caught up in science being boring. Science is supposed to be exciting. It represents real life. So I actually use people's real-life stories in the book to describe the brilliant and profound science of the tree of brain theory of relativity, which is how the brain actually reshapes itself with your own thoughts and unleashes its power that I introduced. So the book is, we're having a huge book signing at California State University, Northridge on November 30th at 6 o'clock p.m. There on the campus. And it's completely sponsored by, it's huge. And it's completely sponsored by the Alumni Association. So I'm so honored to be able to share the science, the new science that I'm introducing to college campuses. And my thing is this: I'm just so happy to share with young people, people who are in their late teens, the people who are in their college years, people who are just graduated, and even people who are in their life looking to make a significant change in their life. I'm just so excited to share with people how to do this. I've had to do it for myself. I had to help my mother do it. I helped brilliant scientists and geniuses do it. And I thought to myself, everyone needs to know this information. This is like this. I really, truly, and I may be biased. I'm just going to say this right now. I may be biased, but I really believe that this is Nobel Prize-winning information in the sense of how your brain works and how it can rewire itself and what can happen and what you can do when you recognize what's going on with it. And I'm so thankful.
I have to say you're not biased at all. I would agree with you on that.
Oh, thank you.
Because I'm looking at this, and yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than what people will averagely pay for a book or a Kindle, but it is worth every dime. I mean, the information in this book, I've been going through it, and it doesn't matter if you're in college and you're taking this as a course or you're just looking for more information for yourself. Answers Unleashed really helps you to shape your life in a different way. If you're looking to make those adjustments, it's got it all in there on really kind of how to do that. You know, and I found the information to be, number one, I love the stories that you use. I mean, lessons are always best learned in parables and stories where people can understand and relate. But then the information, the science behind it's like, wow, okay, it just makes sense no matter who's reading it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you know, and thank you for getting this all together because, I mean, work like this must have taken a few years to at least get together and develop. I mean, I don't know. You're pretty much a brainiac in stilettos, so I'm sure that it may have been a little bit sooner for you than the average bear, but, you know, you got this all together. My goodness.
Well, thank you. It took 3 years. It took 13 years of working with my mother. And I'm so thankful. When people meet her, they have no idea what's happened because she's physically healed so beautifully. But we know what's happened, and we know and I share how brilliant her story is in the book. And I honor her story and her life and her faith that she used to be able to bring this knowledge into the world by her being alive. And I am just so moved because it was like years of frustration for me, both in my own life. How was I going to change my own situation? It was years of frustration of where I was working with other geniuses, and they didn't understand how to explain what they were seeing to the average public. That was number one. And then they were frustrated because here I was someone completely different, and they didn't completely understand me at first. And so I had to work through that frustration so we could all be on the same page and we could create things and talk on the same language. And then it was like years of frustration because I went through my own challenges, and when I see the frustration that other scientists are seeing with there needs to be a push of people going into these groundbreaking fields. It doesn't just have to be science, but it's creating something new that would benefit in your life and then benefit in the lives of every single person that are around you. There is a process of brain waves that deals with creativity and innovation. And nobody ever had presented this in a way that made logical sense. And so with all those frustrations put together, the way that I dealt with it is by writing. Just writing down what I would recognize and seeing all the different types of challenges that other people were facing, I was facing, and how did we get through it? And I present the situations of people that got through it and the people who didn't. So the reader is able to see firsthand the thoughts that accompany people who succeed versus the people who don't. And it is real life people. And my friends that are in the book, they have, I told them, I'm like, I'm going to use your story here. Is that okay? I'm going to change your name. Is that okay? I'll give you a copy of the book. Is that okay? And they're like, well, what? If my information, and they were so all honored because if my information is going to help other people, yes. So these are real life stories, and I tend to be around people who are also overcomers and people who are also success oriented, not in the typical way that you would expect. Not like the brilliant billionaire type of people, which I'm around those individuals as well. But I mean, it's like the nuances of everyday type of successes that you overlook. Every single one of us has the ability to create a success day. Every single day is an opportunity for us. And when we're able to change our thinking from any type of difficult, chaotic situation and look at it as a gift of energy that we have to be able to shift that energy and move it over towards our brain so it can reshape, so we can do something with it, that is the brilliance of your life.
And, and I so appreciate that you said that, because there's so many different levels of success. What is success for one person will not be success for somebody else. And it doesn't always equate to large sums of money. It could be better health, or, just feeling fulfilled in the work that you do. Whatever that is, being able to go out for a walk when maybe that wasn't something that you could do before. I've had friends who have had traumatic brain injuries, and it changes everything. So your level of gratitude, really shifts on what you can do.
And I can speak personally over something. I reveal personal things that had happened in my life that I had to find the benefit in and had to find success in. And I speak about my personal trauma that I experienced when I was younger. Women go through trauma all the time. And for my particular early life upbringing, I not only had a very difficult upbringing that I had to go through, I was sexually abused when I was younger. And so I didn't recognize that my brain hid that type of trauma away from me because my consciousness couldn't handle it. And so it wasn't until 30 years later did the memory come back up, but that was when I was able, with the tools, to be able to process it and remove it from my being. But it had showed up in all sorts of different ways that I was operating. Like when a man would get so close, I'd be like, ah! And it didn't necessarily know how to be able to, how to understand or understand that, because cortisone and adrenaline was firing in my brain, and I was not even aware of this. So once I became aware of the thoughts of where it came from, then I had the ability to shift my own thoughts to create a way for my brain to actually find a way to be able to take the thought of before of fear and change it into creativity in myself, so I could now turn back on different sensations in my hands and my arms and my abdomen that turns off when we go through traumatic situations. And that's just one example. There's another example of a woman, Vanna, in the book. Her success is she married a man that she thought was going to be a great husband and everything else like that, but then she found out that he turned out to be abusive. And there was this one moment in time where she realized, what do I want for myself? How am I going to take care of myself and my child? Because he went to hit her child. He hit her. And he went to hit the child. And that moment of chaos was her defining moment where she made that decision, and that decision reshaped her brain and fired away a new pathway in her brain where she decided to defend herself and the baby. And in that process, she removed herself out of that situation where she found a healthier life. And that was her success, getting out of that situation and moving into a situation where she could support herself and the baby on her own. So that was her success. And we all have different types of successes in our lives. And it's not just the scientific success. It is finding a way to be able to move out of a mindset and a mind frame where we cage ourselves in a situation that only brings us suffering.
Well, and I don't want to give it all away, because I felt like your book is probably one of the most powerful books that I have ever picked up. And so I would encourage people to go and purchase their own Answers Unleashed copy. But you do talk about how things like, surgeries and child abuse and molestations and car crashes and all these different things create stresses in our life that kind of separates our brain.
Yeah, it separates it. I call it brain break. When we go through a chaotic situation, every single one of us on the face of the planet is living. And so because we are living, we are going to go through chaos. And what chaos is when we have a very traumatic or difficult situation that's very challenging and we don't know how to handle. In that moment in time, there's an energy in the situation. The energy in the situation is there for us. Now, it can go inside of our system and in our brain, and we can process it, where it can separate our brain into places. It separates it into pieces. And when it does, I call it brain brink. Or it can go into our brain and into our system in a way that we can transform it so we can use that power almost like a superhero. I want to say it's going to sound strange.
but it's true.
Yeah, almost like a superhero, like a Superman or like Wonder Woman in a weird way, where we're able to take in that energy and transform it and bring out the courage that literally changes our brain and changes our life at that moment in time. And what brain brink is, and I want to really make sure people really know what this is. Mm-hmm. When you go through any type of very traumatic situation, all of us have gone through that, no matter what type of situation you've gone through. When you go through a very traumatic situation, you naturally release cortisol, which is like a stress type of hormone. You naturally release adrenaline, which is a fight or flight or flee hormone, something that keeps you safe. Your heart rate goes up, so you have restricted movement in your veins, and you have higher pressure in your system. The body temperature goes up, so you are basically fevering yourself at that particular moment. Well, and there's a host of different chemical reactions that happen in the brain. This combination of chemical reactions create glue. You have brain glue. I call it brain brink. Mm-hmm. So this glue basically is created because your brain is separating. So it's trying to hold it all together with the glue. I mean, this is the best way to describe it. Mm-hmm. So this glue tries to hold you together, but it's designed to not stay there. It's designed to move out of your brain and exit your system through your endocrine system and through your bodily functions. Mm-hmm. But if you hold on to the fear, if you hold on to the trauma, that glue then hardens in your brain, and it doesn't allow your brain to reshape itself. It's like super glue. That's the best way to describe it. It's like super glue. And when that super glue holds your brain together, it doesn't reshape. Therefore, you don't have neuroplasticity. You don't have a way for the brain to reshape itself because it's glued together in one spot. And you see this with football players when they go through head injuries and they're playing football. The CTE, what everyone is talking about in the media, which is the brain degeneration that's found after death, which is the dark tar-like masses that happen in the brain, it's because someone has gone through physical trauma and that glue is present in the brain and it doesn't release. So in the book, I talk about how to release that glue, that brain brink, so someone's brain can actually naturally reconnect and then remove the glue from the system. And the glue from the system is literally trying to keep your sanity in place. That's what it is there for, to keep your brain together, but in the process of it staying there, if it stays there for long periods of time, that's when it creates learning disabilities. And this is what my theory is. It creates learning disabilities. It creates CTE, which you see the football players have. It creates hypertension in the body. It creates the stress that the anxiety people feel about just doing simple things every single day. So in the book, I talk about how to get rid of that brain brink so your brain actually connects again.
And I think people are looking for ways to take these things that have happened, regardless of what's going on, and move beyond them. And your book really gives great information on how to start doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of ways. I have the brain brink test where you can actually take a self-test and find out which part of your brain is actually disconnected. And we all have different parts of our brain that's been disconnected, trust me.
I'm sure.
Like, for example, I had no idea that the left side of my brain was disconnected from the right side of my brain for years. And I was like, And how I recognize this is that I would actually see numbers like transpose, like 7, 8, I would see it 8, 7, and people call that dyslexia. And for me, and I can't talk about anyone else, but for me, it was because the left side of my brain wasn't talking with the right side of my brain. And I had to learn how to connect those two by strategic exercises, and I share them in the book. And it is being able to connect the energy and the neural pathway flow from both sides of the brain and from the brain to the body. So you can find out what part of your brain is disconnected. The right side, if your right side of the brain is disconnected, then you'll see very difficult times with you in relationships. Everybody.
Well, okay, I think you figured out what it's like, okay, transpose numbers, difficulty with relationships. But what's great about this, regardless where we are in our path, we can take this information and start to use it to make shifts.
Yeah, we are. We're able to make shifts. If our left brain is disconnected, we have difficulty finding the resources and recognizing what's right in front of us to use. Like, for example, if you don't have a stapler in front of you and you don't have any paper clips and you have to keep papers together, how do you do that? So you look around and you find a folder. You put it all in a folder. Well, that's how the left brain works. You see what resources you have and you use them. But if someone can't even figure that out at that moment in time, that's a sign that your left brain is not actually firing or connecting. And there's different ways for you to actually rebuild that up using mathematics and science applications. If your face brain...
No, go ahead.
If your face brain is disconnecting, that means that you are having trouble being able to see your future before it exists. All brilliant people, billionaires, their specialty is doing that. They can see how their money is going to increase.
And then it is so, because they're putting that into action. It's just like they had a test a few years back where they took these Olympic athletes and they had them hooked up to all these electrodes and then sitting down and in their mind running through, if they're going to the track run or whatever it is that they were going to do. And the brain would fire off exactly as it would as if they were actually doing the event.
Exactly. And it does that in the opposite way, too. If you're very fearful of something and you keep imagining something that's fearful, your brain will constantly fire off fear, and you will constantly keep creating the glue in your brain, not recognizing it. So there's actually a way, it's like a pleasure principle. And I learned this from, he's actually more of a natural medicine doctor. That's what I call him, Sean Wolf. He's the one who was one of the researchers that held his workshops. And he actually helped me with the pleasure principle. This is a really cool way for you to stop your brain from actually creating that brain break, which is anytime you're really fearful of a situation happening, and let's say you're in a situation where you don't like it, first you have to recognize, one, you don't like it. You have to become aware of it. That's number one. You have to become aware that you feel uncomfortable in a situation and admit it. You can't lie to yourself and say, I feel good at this, and then go in a situation and you just feel horrible. You can't do that to yourself. That's no integrity for yourself. You have to admit when you don't feel comfortable, and that is like the first step in moving forward. Admission. So when you recognize you don't feel comfortable and you want the situation to change, you can actually overlay your thought of something that happened really, really great in the past. And this is one exercise in the book. If you can remember to your earliest childhood memory where you had the most joy and the most pleasure and the most peace that you can ever remember, if you can think of that one moment in time where nothing ever could bring you down, and that where you felt the best in your entire life, if you can find a moment in time where you felt like that, or even if you haven't experienced that, most people have, though, one moment in time. But let's say you haven't. If you can imagine something, that's great. Either way. And you literally take that thought, take that feeling that you had at that exact same moment, and literally overlay that vision on top of what you're seeing that makes you uncomfortable. Whatever has made you uncomfortable at that moment, will stop its power in how you are feeling your anxiety. You are literally taking that memory and serving it for your purpose in being able to shut off the brain brink glue from firing in your brain, so you now can actually think correctly to be able to move forward in that position, in that situation.
Oh, my gosh. What a beautiful note to end on. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that just puts a person in such a delicious place, and being able to be there. You're also imagining being there and also, doing something that moves your brain out of this glue state. I mean, I think it's just so profound, and your entire book is profound. My goodness.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, Olympia, gosh, where can I? Because I know you do you teach. You have a podcast, which I find very inspirational. I've been listening to all of them, and I highly recommend that our listeners do as well, and also pick up their copies of not just Mathophobia, but Answers Unleashed. Have both copies of those, because it just moves that, if you're looking to move yourself forward, these are the books to do it with.
Thank you. My goal is always, this is my goal. Someone can always find me on AnswersUnleashed.com. They can always find me on Facebook.com/Olympia. And people can always find me on my main website, OlympiaLePoint.com. And my main goal is, I've been teaching and educating in the science world, and I've been educating on university and college campuses. But my goal is to be able to take a university education home to you, so you're able to learn at home too. So no matter what age you are, no matter what type of experiences you've gone through, you can become a genius too. So that's my goal.
And you also work with companies where you do management consulting. So if there's a company, because I know you've worked with aerospace and finance and, the federal government and education, but if there's a company that's, looking to make shifts in their business, you help with that as well.
Yeah. I help the leaders regain their vision. And I help leaders understand how to communicate their vision to the people who can help them. That is my specialty. So I help leaders figure out the strategy that will be able to produce change that will grow.
Well, you definitely are a mover and a shaker, and I'm so glad we got to spend this time together today, Olympia. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And thank you for your detailed questions and the opportunity to share this knowledge with your listeners. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that's the end of our time for today. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to tune in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.